now that I have overcome those, it is a lot clearer to me that if I don't know something, I am capable of figuring it out and growing as a result and becoming the best version of myself.
Welcome to Business Buying for Financial Independence. I'm Tim Delaney, and I help young professionals buy small businesses so they can escape the 9 to 5 and take control of their time, income, and future. If that sounds like you, hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Michael Castaño is the owner and managing principal of Memtech Acoustics, an architectural acoustics firm specializing in noise control solutions for commercial and industrial environments. Originally from Miami, Florida, and a former MIT engineer turned entrepreneur, Michael left his corporate career to pursue business ownership, driven by a mission to create flexibility, impact, and generational wealth. His journey is rooted in resilience, family, and a deep passion for building systems that empower others. Michael, welcome to Business Buying for Financial Independence. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate you having me.
Anytime. I look forward to jumping into your story today. Michael and I first met a couple years ago at a real estate conference, Bigger Pockets, and just happened to bump into each other again recently at a GoBundance event, the Austin Entrepreneurial Summit. And I found out that Michael had closed on his first business recently and was excited to talk to him a little bit deeper about that, which is why he's here today. So before we jump into that business acquisition, can you give everybody a little bit of background on yourself? I know, as I mentioned, you came from Miami, Florida.
Yeah, of course. So I am born and raised in Miami, Florida, son of two Cuban immigrants that fled the communist regime and started a new life in the United States. They basically left everything they had and had to start from scratch. And I learned as a young boy to the importance of being a hard worker and putting in the energy and effort to make things work. Things aren't just going to land on your lap and make it happen. You have to go out there and do it. So action speaks louder than words is a motto that I hold dearly to myself. So growing up in school, the standards were set high. I was the valedictorian of my high school and always was aspiring to bring home A's on my report card because I knew that if I didn't, there would be other challenges. uh, that was a very good experience growing up. Obviously, I learned very quickly that what I learned as a kid wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to be. So even though I was trained to be a hard worker and put my head down and do the work, there's other ways of doing things that I've learned over the last couple of years that it's not just going to be by myself. I need to also include and partner with strategic individuals that will help me learn what I don't know. So anyways, from there, I went to school at MIT in Boston, actually Cambridge, just across the river, and had a very good time drinking from the fire hose while in college. It was a very challenging times. I would say my college period came and struggled with taking care of my parents at the time because my father having me at a senior age. He was 62 when he had me. So by the time I went to college, he was in his 80s. That was a challenge in terms of health, and I ended up taking a semester off from school to go back home and take care of my ailing father and also my mother, who was struggling to take care of him on her own. So I ended up getting a job as a software developer at a local company in Doral. And that was my first official job, trying to make ends meet, because while my dad had set us up for success with the medical bills and paying somebody of taking care of him full time, it was difficult while I was in college. So I was able to work for a little bit and also seek help for my mom, who ended up needing some assistance from major depression and anxiety as well. In any case, I was able to go back to school and finish my degree as an electrical engineer in computer science. with a minor in management from the MIT Sloan School of Business, and uh, was interviewed at General Motors for an engineering job straight out of college, and I took it. Liked their rotational program and the idea of being able to try out different things before actually committing to a long-term position, since wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my engineering degree.
Nice.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack
Ch
there.
yeah, challenging upbringing, or not challenging upbringing, but challenging degree situation. It's never easy to deal with, sick relatives and, especially from so far away as a young teenager, early 20s.
Yeah, at a very
Well,
young age,
yep,
had to mature very quickly
yeah,
compared to my peers. Yeah.
yeah, and while you're in a high pressure environment, MIT is a no joke school. Tough curriculum, I'm imagining, and a lot to deal with on the academic front and social front as a teen, early 20-year-old. So awesome lesson in perseverance. I'm sure you seems like you learned how to stick with things, and by going back to school when you could get that degree. Um, you talked about that. It sounded like what you were saying is the grades in school was extremely important to your parents. Was there any entrepreneurial education going on in your youth? Like, did they run their own businesses, or was this something completely new to you at your later in life?
Yeah, so unbeknownst to me growing up, my father had taught me how to manage a rental portfolio that he started. And also, he was a self employed pest control technician growing up. He had other careers prior to that, but during my teenage years, he was a pest control technician, and I would go out with him on the weekends to accompany him and support as best as I could in his business. He ran this entirely by himself. He had a list of about 250 customers, and he would call them up himself on a monthly basis and um, have me help him run the books essentially. So I recall as a little kid uh, going through the customer list and checking who needed to be called up next for their monthly schedule, and writing checks out to vendors, communicating with contractors and other parties that were involved, including customers. I recall doing that too, mainly because he didn't speak the language. He, our predominant language at home was Spanish, and he struggled oftentimes to communicate with English speaking vendors or customers. So I would step in at that point in time and help him translate whatever he needed to communicate. So that got me interested and piqued my interest into how this all worked. Granted, this career that he had as a pest control technician is what we believe to have led to his health effects later down the road. But it was a good entrepreneurial experience, and also got me hooked into investing into real estate, which I was able to pick up very quickly once I started working at General Motors, and realizing that I wanted to invest a lot of the funds that I had now had from working a W-2 job. So I do credit my father for a lot of the entrepreneurial mind and hardworking spirit that he left ingrained in me.
That's awesome tribute to him. The I've from stories that I've heard of other immigrant families, it seems like there's usually a one of two paths where either it's the parents just hammer the importance of education, get good grades, go get a good job, or it's all entrepreneurial. We work for ourselves, we have our own businesses, kind of thing. It seems like your family had a good blend of both, with pushing you hard in school, but also teaching you how to run your own business at the same time.
Yeah, well, my dad knew that he wanted to do better. He wanted me to do better than him, and he always told me that uh, he was pushing me because he wanted me to be successful, and he didn't want me to end up being a pest control technician. He he knew the value that there was in learning those skills, but he also understood that I wasn't going to be making a very good living if I just took over the pest control business. So there was a balance there, and he always told me that he wanted me to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer because he knew that those folks make a lot of money. So
Yeah. Nice.
uh,
And an
very typical
engineer.
for an immigrant family. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And an engineer you did become. So, and those jobs with GM, I actually remember. I remember looking into that program. Actually, I went was also in a business undergrad program just across the river from you in at Boston College, and
Cool.
I knew some of my classmates went on to that program at GM or something similar at the time. I'm probably a few years ahead of you, but uh, those are awesome programs for the companies that offer them because you get exposure to different aspects of the company. When you were doing that in that program, what stood out to you the most? What kind of fields or areas did you end up liking the most?
Yeah, great question. So, like you mentioned, the rotational program lasted 2 years. They were, at the time, 4 month rotations. So you can think of like six back to back internships, essentially. And I ended up landing in a calibration role. So in the engine calibration department. And that's out in Milford, Michigan, just in the suburbs of Detroit. And General Motors has a testing facility. They call it the Proving Grounds of about 5,000 acres of land that's just dedicated to testing. So we have various different racetracks. We have different road grades and anything you can think of, even from the brick blocks of Europe. That we have that here too, really to kind of cover all the bases as much of the spectrum as much as possible. So um, that piqued my interest the most, and I think it was because of the hands-on experience and the instant gratification that you have being a calibration engineer. I mean, you're literally sitting in the vehicle with your laptop connected directly to the engine control module, and you are basically calibrating the software that the is embedded in the control module to make sure that the engine is performing at the level that the driver would expect. So we basically are tweaking different values in the software to ensure that the actuators and the system as a whole is responding adequately. And that was what I enjoyed the most and ended up staying in that position for approximately 6 years. Actually, it was more like 5 years. Did spend a year in Phoenix, Arizona, in the IT department, but that didn't go so well. So I ended up back in in calibration.
Nice. So, was your father right? Was engineering a good paying career?
Yes, I did start off. I was fortunate. I do want to say that I was very fortunate enough and to start off with a good paying salary and able to save a lot. Growing up, being very frugal and knowing the value of money and how to manage it was very critical. So I knew right away that I didn't want lifestyle inflation to creep up, and I was very intentional with how I spent those first dollars that I earned at General Motors. Um, I recall having a discussion with a coworker around the benefits of a 401k, a Roth IRA, having a brokerage account, and investing into the market, which I didn't know anything about. My father, as much as he wanted me to be educated, never taught me much beyond putting money aside in a certificate of deposit or a CD, as most people know, and kind of just holding on to the cash because he was very conservative and didn't want to risk it. His biggest risk that he took was buying a rental property in Orlando, and that was very risky to him. So I never knew anything about investing in the stock market or having a Roth IRA or a 401k. This was all new to me. So I'm very grateful to my coworker who taught me the benefits and the 401k match that GM also offers, and making sure that I wasn't leaving money on the table. So that all kind of kickstarted the whole process. And once I had enough to put a down payment on a rental property, that's exactly what I did in 2019 April.
Okay. So you're saving money, living a good lifestyle, not letting the big paycheck go to your head and buying fancy sport cars and all kinds of fun stuff. Or maybe you did, but you saved enough to put a down payment on a rental property. What what got you interested in the rental properties?
Yeah, and I would say I'll also add to that. I mean, it was helpful to live in the Midwest, and where
Mhm.
the cost of living is relatively low. I mean,
Mhm.
compared to other parts of the country, so that helped save a good amount as well. What got me interested into real estate was really being the quote unquote property manager for my father growing up, and he purchased that rental that I'm referring to in May of 2011. So I was roughly 17 years old at the time, 18, turning 18. And he wasn't too sure how to go about renting out the property, looking for comparisons, and I should say it's the rental comparisons, and understand what the market rent was. So we ended up hiring a real estate agent that helped us with the whole process of vetting a candidate and filling in the vacancy. And that was a good trial run for not only himself, but for me to understand what the process looked like. I recall that the real estate agent only went as far as to place the tenant, and then we were responsible for the ongoing maintenance and collecting the rent. So if there was ever a call from the tenants that there was an issue, I usually was the one that my father looked to help him find the contractors or do research online to find out who can help. I don't think if I mentioned this, but this property was in Orlando while we were in Miami. So being about 2.5, 3 hours away, that also presented some challenges managing the property remotely. But we were able to streamline the process. Came to good terms with the tenant and several different contractors in the area, and was able to build up the confidence level to say, okay, I could probably rinse and repeat this process over again. It was just a matter of saving the down payment and finding that next. Now, granted, for when I got to Michigan, the first area that I vetted was Detroit, not only because of the more affordable houses that were in the area, but also because Detroit was starting to come back alive after the 08, 09 crisis, and especially in the automotive industry. So I saw it as a good investment over the long run to invest in Detroit and increase my chances of, even though it was a high risk, I thought there was going to be a high reward associated with that as well, which ultimately did turn out to be the case. It was just there were challenges along the way, which I learned, and now I know that I prefer to invest in A and B neighborhoods rather than C or D neighborhoods. But that's just a personal preference for individuals, and I think it's how much are you willing to risk and how much can you stomach, and it comes down to your own personal risk tolerance.
I think that's a common pathway that a lot of real estate investors take. From my perspective, it's the C and Ds are a little bit easier to get into, and usually cash flow a little bit nicer, so they look more appealing up front when you're running the numbers. But as you get some experience, you realize that maybe a little bit less cash flow, but higher upside appreciation in the A's and B's with less headaches are often the way to go. But it's understandable to start somewhere. We all do it, and I think. So in 2019, you're starting to buy rental properties. What was so you and you started that because you had this experience as a teenager, with your father's rental property, and you knew that you could do it because if you did it from 2.5 hours away, you could do it in your own backyard with reasonably priced real estate in Michigan. Um, what what was your thought process there? What was your target to acquire a certain number of rentals? Did you hit that, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so I recall, also while I was at General Motors and listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast while I was out on the test tracks, collecting data. I would have the podcast running in the background. I also listened to Paula Pant with Afford Anything and the Bigger Pockets Money podcast. So all great tools and resources to kind of elaborate and expand upon what I already had learned from experience. And I remember Brandon Turner always mentioning $100 per door. Which nowadays is not the best reference to real estate. But I use that as a kind of a tool to understand how many units I wanted to get to, how many properties I wanted to acquire, and I believe at the time I was looking to get up to $5,000 in passive income, uh, which would substantially subsidize a lot of my expenses. Um,
Yeah. Was there was that with a goal of getting out of your job? Did you not like your job? Did you not want to stay there long term? Or was it just you thought it would be nice to have the extra cash flow and
Yeah, I at the time I had listening to podcasts. I mean, Rich Dad Poor Dad is another one. Is another book that I read during that time, and it always makes reference. There was always reference to having multiple streams of income, and that was really what I was after. Is not just solely reliant on my W-2, but trying to get to that seven streams of income that folks always talk about. And I viewed investing in the stock market as one, investing in real estate, and having the W-2 was my third, and then really trying to spread my eggs across multiple baskets and not have them all in one basket. That was really the goal there, and being a diversifying my assets was also a way for me to reduce risk. So I didn't if something were to happen to real estate again, that I would didn't have all my wealth in real estate, and if I got laid off for some reason, I could still fend for myself with a considerable runway if needed. So that was really my thought process during that time. Is like, how can I diversify? How can I set myself up for uh, security and safety, not just financially, but also mentally, being able to sleep well at night, knowing that I wasn't just reliant on this W-2.
that's yeah. So there's a couple key things that I want to point out to the audience. There is number one, you talked about these various podcasts that you were listening to, and in particular, while you were, in the test cars doing your job. That was something that shifted for me about 10 years ago on my hour and a half roughly in the car every day. Stopping listening to music and only listening to podcasts that taught me things or books on tape. And I give a lot of credit to that for my own personal development of learning things, relearning things, having things emphasized. And it sounds like you were also pretty intentional about gaining new knowledge and re-emphasizing the knowledge you already had by listening to these different people and podcasts. Scott and Mindy on Bigger Pockets Money have shared so many valuable lessons over the years, as well as Paula Pant. Uh, so that's awesome. And the other thing that you touched on there that I try to point out to people all the time, even though you had a nice high paying job with a degree that you weren't necessarily probably not necessarily easily replaceable, you still had the realization or the understanding that, you know what, you could lose your job for no fault of your own at any given time or moment. And you were setting yourself up for, uh, to be able to weather a storm like that by having cash flow from real estate, which is one thing that I try to emphasize to people all the time. It doesn't matter how much you love your job, doesn't matter how successful or how strong you think the company you work for is. You never know when that could go away or when something could change drastically, that that makes you not like your job anymore. So good for you to be thinking ahead like that. Was was that also kind of when you started evolving your mindset from employee to business owner?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was seeing what I could accomplish just in real estate from 2019 to 2022 when myself and my fiance took a sabbatical and we traveled the world for 10 months and realized that this is something that we can accomplish and we can do if we set our minds to it. That was the moment in my mind where it clicked is like, well, this is the proof of concept. Like I am living it. I was able to leave my job for 10 months and be okay and
Let's back
and
that up.
travel the world.
So hold on, 10 months traveling the world as a W-2 employee with a real estate portfolio? What, how did that come about? How did GM take it when you said you were gonna take a 10-month trip?
Yeah. So it was a great yeah. So let me rewind. Basically, what happened? It was in 2020, obviously with the pandemic. Uh, everybody was encouraged to work from home and only come in as needed. Basically, we're working from home. Cooped up inside, and we were eager to get some breath of fresh air and do something different. So that was also in during the time when I went to Phoenix, like I mentioned earlier, uh, because my fiance wanted to be closer to her family, given the circumstances. So in 2021, we moved to Phoenix. Her family's in Los Angeles, by the way, but there was only an opportunity to move to Phoenix because GM has or had, I should say, an IT center in Chandler. So I was able to transfer to that team in Chandler, and she was able to transition into a fully remote position in June of 2021. We also had the opportunity to acquire another property where I was basically looking to acquire as many properties as I could during that time while I had the W 2. So that presented a good opportunity to not only purchase a property and try out being closer to her family, but also get a sense of being somewhere else outside of Michigan. Because similar to me, she also wanted to go back and be outside of the cold. We're not from the cold, being from Miami and her from the LA region. It was a recurring conversation that we had is like, what can we do to leave the cold? So, anyways, long story short, by December of 2021, we had basically made the decision that this new role, this new opportunity that we had wasn't cutting it. We weren't very in, challenged. We didn't feel fulfilled in this role, and we asked our managers about taking a leave of absence, which at the time was more accepted, I should say, because of the situation with the COVID and a lot of familial uh, demands, not only from my side, but also from her side. So we decided to just take a breath of fresh air and travel to Mexico for 2 months, where her parents had her childhood home there and spent 2 months in Mexico. Then we went and spent 3 months in Asia, traveling all the way from South Korea down to Indonesia, all along the coast. And then came back, spent a month in Canada, and left after that to Europe for 2.5 months, where we also had a great time at a friend's wedding in Italy. So, all in all, it was a very amazing experience to be able to do that at our stage in life, where most people can only do that when they retire in their late 60s and 70s, and at that point in time, it's not the same. So, being able to enjoy that at a young age was something that not many are able to, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's a testament to what investing in yourself, in your own streams of income can do. I'm sure, I'm guessing that you would not have necessarily done something like that if you didn't have some assets in real estate and some cash flow coming in
Absolutely.
on top of your savings.
Yeah, it's that mindset of deferred gratification, I would say. Like you alluded to earlier, we didn't spend a lot of money in the flashy items, and all of my money was being funneled into real estate and a very frugal lifestyle. So that allowed us to delayed gratification. I'm sorry, that's the word I was looking for. So delaying that gratification proved to be very rewarding at the end.
Yep. Yeah, I'm very similar in that I don't like fancy clothes, cars, any of that kind of stuff, but we do as a family splurge on some nice vacations to remote places that
Yeah.
not many people go to because it's also mind opening, right? I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about what that does for your mind and your attitude and everything, traveling and seeing these different places?
Yeah. Well, first, it was a great way to know that me and my fiance were a good match for each other because spending 10 months together traveling could end in one of two ways. But luckily, it only strengthened the relationship, and we became a lot closer. And she also appreciated all the hard work and effort that we had been putting in, and saw in her own way what we could accomplish if we set our minds to it. So yeah, it was a lot of time of reflecting, understanding myself, understanding what I wanted to do with my life, because up until that point, I had really followed societal norms, I would say, around being a good student, putting in the hard work, and being a good son to my parents and being there for them. But I had never really had the opportunity growing up to understand what is it really that I wanted. And that trip really was eye opening to me to be able to take a step back and reflect on everything that had happened to me, all the adversity, all the challenges, all the sweat and tears and hard moments in my life that had defined me to that point. But I really stopped and said, okay, I have a choice here. I don't have to allow all those negative experiences to determine how I go forward. I had the option, I have control over um, letting that fuel me or letting that hold me down. So for me, it was the former. It was a fuel that I then took and doubled down upon returning to my W-2, and started doing research and doing even more networking events, surrounding myself with individuals that I knew were at the level that I wanted to be, and learning from them what they did in their lives to accomplish their goals. And that's where I came across GoBundance. That's where I really dove all in on the community and learned about business buying, and what it all took to do it. And something that I never would have dreamt 2 years ago, uh, I was able to accomplish in 12 months after joining GoBundance.
Wow. Yeah, the power of community, uh, and in particular, just being in the right rooms with the right people is incredibly powerful. Just from a motivation standpoint of, wow, look at what that person is accomplishing. What am I doing? Why can't I should be doing that. What's my problem? To actually asking and getting advice from people and uh, learning ways to cut out some of the challenges that others went through that you can bypass by asking and getting advice from those types of people.
Absolutely.
So did you join GoBundance before you started contemplating buying a business? Is that what kind of got sparked your interest in buying a business was GoBundance, being in those rooms?
Yeah, I was a combination of GoBundance, also listening and following Cody Sanchez, and reading the book by Walker Dybel, Buy Then Build. It was a combination of all those, and some others as well, more podcasts. So right when I got back to my W-2 in 2023, I really went back to looking at real estate deals because that's what I knew. But in 2023, interest rates had started increasing and the numbers just weren't working to the level that I needed them to be at to be comfortable. Again, risk is very subjective and everybody's risk tolerance is unique to them. But I didn't see anything in the market at the time that was working, so that's when I started to pivot. And I also want to give credit to Diego Corzo. That's how I learned about GoBundance in the first place. I was a member of his mastermind group at the time called Rat Race to Fi. That's the other podcast that I've ever been on is the Rat Race to Fi podcast. And being in that mastermind group helped me understand what it takes to reach that level of financial independence that I was striving for. And I realized that alone in real estate may not be the answer. So I started looking for other avenues to invest and learn. I'm always looking to learn and challenge myself. That's something that I hold myself high to that standard of challenging myself and learning new things. So when I came to find out what all GoBundance was about and what everybody was doing in there. I joined in December of 23 and went through the process of being assigned a pod. And there was a good mixture of folks that invest in real estate and operate a business. In December of 23, when I joined GoBundance, I was able to learn from others in the group how to acquire a business. And what really was the catalyst for me was the Austin Entrepreneurial Summit in May of 2024, when there was an Emerge workshop right after the AES conference, where Cody Sanchez was at as well. And she was speaking to business buying. And that workshop right after was the catalyst for me to get out of my own way and take action, nonstop action to buy a business, because that workshop was very introspective and very deep to understanding what were the limiting beliefs that I was telling myself. What were the stories that I was iterating in my own head and affecting my mindset, that once I was able to push through and tear down that barrier, it was like I was on the other side of just success. Like it felt like I was unstoppable. I still feel like I'm unstoppable, and I realized that it had all come down to this moment as a kid when my father, I would like to think unintentionally, uh, kind of told me that I was not worthy, that I was not enough for him to, because he was asking for something and I was distracted playing a video game in my room, and I didn't come to help him with something. And he immediately, the words that came out of his mouth were very impactful to me as a little kid, especially since I was always looked up to him as a role model and wanted to make sure that I was doing everything in my power to make him proud of me. But that moment, I that I remembered, and I was holding inside of me that I had let him down, and that was holding me back because I was still trying to please him, if that makes sense. So that event at AES in 2024 made me realize that my future is not about pleasing him or anybody else. It's about pleasing myself and doing what I want to do. And my future self, what version of me do I want to be? So that was a very captivating moment that Aaron Belke and Marty Noki led the workshop, and was very very meaningful to me. And ever since that event in May of 2024, it was just step after step after step after step. And 6 months later, I was closing on the business acquisition deal. Oh, and in addition to closing on the business acquisition deal, I also closed on or transacted 4 real estate transactions during that time as well. So, from 2021 to 2023, I was in a hiatus in the real estate market, but in 6 months, I did 4 real estate transactions and closed on a business deal.
Wow. That is super powerful. First of all, thank you for going deep on that story about your father. That's very emotional, and it sounds like a moment of trauma in your childhood that you were able to break through as an adult, and break through you did with a business acquisition in 6 months. In and of itself is a quite an accomplishment. It's one thing I talk to a lot of people about, and I hear of, and I actually had a call earlier this morning, another podcast recording where the guy's been working on a deal for 18 months. So it's to find and close one in 6 months is amazing, and then to also do 4 real estate deals in that time frame is incredibly powerful.
And I would
Yeah,
also encourage the listeners not to uh, think that business acquisition is a race by any means. I mean, 6 months is short in the grand scheme of things, but I also encourage everybody to do their due diligence and make sure that what they're buying is something that they feel comfortable with, because it's not a race; it's a marathon, and it could take years. You don't know, but for me, it just happened to be 6 months.
yeah, 100%. It's definitely it can get. So you hear people like Cody or others talk about buying businesses, and everybody gets all excited and hits the internet hard and calls a couple brokers, and then weeks, months, 6 months, a year goes by, and you don't feel any closer for some people. But you
Yeah, it
were,
could be
yep,
disillusioning to
yep,
some. Yeah.
yeah. So so what was your search process like? So May 2024, you get this in your head, you're going to do it. You're free of your past limiting beliefs that are holding you back, and you're going full steam. What did that process look like? Did brokers, websites? What did you do?
Yeah, yeah, I would say my frame shifted after that. So I started by finishing the book by Walker Dybel, Buy Then Build. That's a great resource for anybody out there that's looking to understand how the business buying process works. There's plenty of other resources as well. That's just the one that I happened to read. And then I went on a couple websites, including BizBuySell, LoopNet, and Cody Sanchez's new brokerage, not brokerage, but business searching website, which I can't recall off the top of my head right now. But those are all great resources to start looking. By no means did I think that I was going to find the deal that I was looking for on BizBuySell, but it's a great resource for brokers. So what I did is I compiled a list of brokers uh, that had listed businesses that I was interested in. Being that I had a lot of experience in real estate, I started looking in the home services sector, and reached out to a couple brokers to get on their distribution list because Biz by Sell is kind of the bottom of the barrel. By the time deals get listed on there, they've been viewed by many other folks. So you want to try and get to the top of the funnel as best as possible, and the best way to do that is to build connections and relationships with brokers directly. So I had a couple that I was on their list. I also talked to a couple of franchises and was this close to buying a franchise, I should say. But I'm glad I didn't because there's a lot of pitfalls and limitations that you have buying a franchise. But again, it started in the home services space and quickly shifted once I came to learn that home services is a very HR heavy industry. So the biggest issue you'll have, from what I learned talking to franchisees and other business owners, is keeping people um, in your payroll. It seems to be like a revolving door for a lot of these businesses, and retaining talent is a very time consuming part of the business. So I like to think of home services as kind of like a talent acquisition and talent retention business, which I quickly realized was not the route I wanted to take. So just when I was about to give up, because again, it could be very disillusioning to have put in all this time and effort and still not run into uh, the deal that you want. I did look at buying an electrical service business, HVAC business, and it just didn't work out. So just when I was about to give up and just pivot back into real estate, I got a phone call from a broker who happens to be in GoBundance as well, and he mentioned that he had a engineering firm about an hour away that was representing the seller in, and that he thought it would be of interest to me, given my background as an electrical engineer. So I met with the seller, I met with him and the broker, and got a quick rundown of what the business was about. And the business had been around for over 20 years, doing noise and vibration consulting. So you can call it an acoustics engineering firm, based out of Rochester Hills in Michigan. And I was very intrigued when I found out the services that were being provided and the problem solving aspect. And really, the value that I saw was in revamping the infrastructure in the business, because the previous owner was basically a baby boomer looking to retire, and had not implemented a whole lot of technology in the business. There was no CRM, there was no tech stack or ERP backbone or anything of the sort. Everything was kind of just back of the napkin, or QuickBooks, basically a old 2015 version of QuickBooks. So there was a lot of upside that I saw in the business that I could come in and add some sweat equity, which I knew how to do very, very easily. So I also went the SBA route. So in terms of financing, I was able to get a standby notes from the seller for 2 years. This was before the SBA made the changes that they did recently on the seller standby notes. I believe now the minimum requirement is 10 years, whereas when I closed on the business, it was a 2-year standby note. So I was fortunate enough to have that count towards my down payment, and basically put 5% down on the business, just like I would on a real estate transaction, and have the rest of it be financed by SBA.
That's awesome. And that's one of the beautiful things about buying a business from my perspective is even that second note from the seller counts as part of your down payment. And presumably the business still cash flows even with that high leverage situation. Whereas a lot of times with real estate, especially right now, though, with the rates the way they are, you're barely cash flowing on a deal if you over leverage on it. I want to back up for a second and talk a little bit more about what you were saying about biz buy sell and brokers, because this is something that people go to those websites, biz buy sell, LoopNet. I think Cody's is called Biz Scout.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and there's lots of deals on there. Well, there's lots of listings on there. I might not use the word deals because there's oftentimes, as you mentioned, that's where brokers start listing things when their initial pool of potential buyers all pass on a deal. So business brokering is a lot different than real estate, wherein real estate brokers put it up on a couple websites and then it goes far and wide, and everybody, in theory, knows that this house is for sale. With commercial assets and with businesses in particular, brokers will get the listing and they won't really always tell other people or other brokers about what they have for sale. They call in particular buyers that they know might be interested first. And then they start reaching out to other buyers that they've had contact with that they think might be interested before they list it on a site like Biz Buy Sell. So as Michael mentioned, being at the top of that funnel, making your name known to brokers, selling yourself to brokers, making sure that they know that you're a serious buyer, is a great way to get those leads. So, like as Michael mentioned, he was interested in home services, but a broker that knew him and knew what he was, knew what his background was, called with a business that fit his skill set, which is important because probably, as he mentioned, those home services businesses I know are a really hot topic right now in the business buying communities. Everybody's talking about them, but the practicality of running them with HR turnover issues constantly is can be quite a challenge if you're not prepared for it. So this seems to fit Michael's skill set a little bit better, and it seems to be working out so far. So you're in the business with 5% of your own cash, seller note, SBA back note. Uh, when did you close on it?
January 14th of this year,
Okay,
2025.
2025. So we're about 6 months, 7 months into it now. Um, what I guess actually before we get into that, what was the due diligence process like? How long? Yeah, how long from LOI to closing was it?
Yeah, I think the LOI was accepted sometime in September, if I'm not mistaken. And we entered into contract in October. I think it was a 30-day LOI review period. And then once we entered into contract, the CPA took a look at the financials and had an attorney draft. Actually, I'm getting that mixed up. The attorney and the CPA was during the 30-day LOI review period, and then they drafted up the agreement, the purchase agreement, that would basically be an asset purchase from the old company into the new company. I had previously reviewed a couple other deals by that point. I think I had about other deals that I had looked at prior to this one, and I kind of knew what questions to ask to understand what things to look out for. So, looking at the profit and loss, looking at the bank statements, looking at the balance sheet, and making sure things align there. I also had obviously the help of the CPA and the attorney to assist in the due diligence process, but it was pretty straightforward. Um, the purchase price was for $800,000. Yeah, that included all the inventory and the all the assets, essentially, including the name, the website, everything.
Nice. And you mentioned asset sale. I've gone over this in a few other episodes, but essentially there's a stock sale or an asset sale. Asset sale is when you basically create a new entity and buy all of the assets of the old entity, including the name. So, outwardly appearing, customers may not really even know the difference, but technically you are a different company. And that helps protect your liability in the long run. That nobody can come out of the woodwork and say that the company wronged them in the past and file a lawsuit because that old company is gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
Correct.
So it's usually more advantageous for a buyer to go the asset purchase route, but there are reasons that sometimes a stock sale is necessary or more advantageous.
Yeah, one other thing I'll add to the due diligence process was finding a local bank that felt comfortable closing or funding the deal. There was also due diligence on that front to find a bank that provided the most favorable terms. I did have a couple different lenders compete against one another to on the interest rate, so I was able to get prime plus 1.5 on the SBA loan, and then I also was able to secure a line of credit from the start for prime plus 1.25
Nice.
and that was very helpful as well.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Something I probably don't talk about enough, but I have mentioned in the past. When you're buying a business, especially in an asset sale, because sometimes with the asset sales, you're not collecting accounts receivable, which can be challenging for cash flow purposes early on. So making sure that you have working capital to get you through that first 60 to 90 days in particular is crucial. And and if you have growth plans, you'll need even more working capital. So whether it's secured as part of the main business loan, or whether it's opening up a line of credit immediately, that's a great tip there. I personally didn't open a line of credit for years after buying my business because I didn't think I would ever use it. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got business wise was open up a line of credit when you don't need the money, because the banks are more than happy to give you money when you don't need it. But when you really, really need it, they don't like to give it to you. That's-
Yes,
so, um,
that's good
great,
advice.
great advice there to get that line of credit during the process. Um, uh, so due diligence, and just to keep that in mind for people when you go under contract or you have an accepted LOI, the clock starts ticking. Usually, there's some kind of earnest money. You have a set defined period for due diligence because you need to respect the seller's time and business as well. They're doing a lot of work during this time to help move the deal along. They need you to move as quickly as possible to vet everything, approve everything. Just in case you don't go through with it, they need to move on with and keep their business running. Which so you've got a set defined period of time. You got to put your effort in, and at the same time, as Michael mentioned, he's out there shopping for loans. So meeting with bankers, talking to them, um, which also is a little bit of a due diligence hack because you're presumably handing the financials over to these different bankers as well and getting their input on things. You never know if one of them might catch something that you didn't see, or ask a question that says, "Oh yeah, maybe I should ask the seller that question." So yeah, there's a lot of work in that process. I interviewed somebody the other day that talked about how exhausted he was the day after closing. Like it was that period. You think of buying a business as like, okay, day one, after you close is the day I'm going to roll my sleeves up and really get busy, which you are, but the months leading up to that closing sometimes are just as exhausting, if not even more so.
Yeah,
Um,
and one other hack that I'll add to that is uh, asking for an exclusivity clause, because I learned quickly from the first couple of deals that I reviewed that uh, you can ask the seller to exclusively allow you to do your due diligence, rather than have multiple buyers at the same time uh, put the purchase under LOI or put the business under LOI and then be competing with other buyers. So you want to try and ask for that exclusivity clause. Some people actually argue that you should walk away if the sellers doesn't agree to an exclusivity clause.
that's a great point. So, LOI, for those that are not familiar, is a letter of intent. When you're buying a business, usually that's where you start. It's a non-binding agreement between buyer and seller on the general terms of the deal, purchase price, subject to everything checking out, the due diligence period, the planned financial arrangement, and then any other terms that you want to put in there, like, as Michael mentioned, an exclusivity clause. So that would give you, the buyer, an exclusive right to do due diligence and move forward with this deal at that point. And it might be for a defined period of time, 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, whatever you and the seller are comfortable with. Wherein, from the seller's perspective, they don't want to be exclusive. If somebody else comes
Right.
along and wants to give them money, they might want to take it. So, uh, it's one of those contingencies that is important for you as the buyer, and you should probably put in there. But don't be surprised if the seller pushes back for various reasons. Uh, but you don't want to spend a month paying a CPA and a lawyer and other professionals, if you employ them to help you do due diligence, only to find out that in the meantime, somebody else was doing due diligence, and they're the ones that the seller is going to move forward with on a contract. So
Exactly.
great tip there. Um, looking back at the process, the due diligence process, any other key lessons you learned, or anything you would have done differently now in that process?
Yeah, I probably would have added a clawback clause, basically guaranteeing that the seller would get his note, or yeah, basically get he would only be paid if the business performed to a minimum degree by the end of the first 12 months or first 24 months. And if it didn't, then the seller note would be renegotiated. Basically, that basically keeps the previous owner invested in the business doing well. And while I haven't had that issue, I think it's come up in several occasions on other conversations that having a clawback in the contract can only be helpful for
Yeah.
many.
I would definitely agree with that. That's one of the advantages of asking a seller to hold a note, um, is putting those clawbacks in, which essentially means it can be around different terms. I've heard of people putting clawbacks in if key employees leave, or if a key customer contract disappears, or or revenue doesn't hit certain metrics. And again, it's one of those things that a seller doesn't really want to hear. They want their money. They're selling their business, but if they truly believe in the business and in those stipulations, they shouldn't have a problem signing it because they trust that things should go right. Obviously, if the buyer is a complete moron or does something, really dumb, or intentionally fires customers, it would be hard to achieve that clawback. But um, that is a great tip to put in there. Um, you had mentioned to me that you're really focused on building a mission-driven business. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that means, and how you're changing the company and the culture, and the overall kind of mission of the business?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I came in, I think I didn't realize how much culture affects the business itself. I actually was recommended a book called Culture Eats Strategy for Lunch, because without culture, you're going to have a hard time implementing anything else in the business. So historically, the culture of the business was just to wait for the phone to ring, sell customers foam and barrier, and that was it. There was no uh, real strategy in or intentionality in making sure that what we're selling them actually works for their situation. And there was no follow up after the fact to make sure that the customer was happy with the results and making sure that they didn't need anything else. So, one of the first things that I shifted the focus on was making sure that are we implementing the engineering and the design work up front to be intentional about how much product this customer needs and be able to solve the exact problem that they have, versus just saying, "Oh yeah, we can fix this by just putting up some foam on the walls or some absorptive panels that will maybe have a good chance of working." And being an engineer myself, I think that it's very important to approach the situation first by understanding what the problem is. So in my mind, it's like a science experiment. You define the problem, you establish your hypothesis, you do the test, and then you confirm whether your hypothesis was correct or not. And if it wasn't, you change your hypothesis and you try again. Um, that's really what I am focused on going forward, and making sure that we are leading with data driven solutions, not just guessing. And what I find gratifying about this business is that one of my core values is productivity, and I am able to see the impact that we have on our customers, whether it be a commercial uh, sector or industrial manufacturing floor. we are able to see the impact that we're having directly on their productivity, on the safety of the workers. It's very fulfilling and very gratifying to be able to see that. We also have done work for childcare centers. Uh, Children with autism are very sensitive to noise and struggle to concentrate and be productive in an environment that's too loud. So we have helped facilities reduce the reverberation time in their classrooms so that the children and the adults together can have a more enjoyable experience in this room. And what makes this business even more rewarding, I would say, is not only the impact that we're having on our customers, but every project is different. There's no one size fits all. Each solution that we come up with is unique to the room that we are dealing with. And while we can reuse some of the products that we have to solve the problem, it's always going to be a matter of what are the room characteristics, what that will define what the solution is going to be. It's very fascinating, the acoustic realm, and how different houses of worship and how different educational spaces respond differently to different sounds in the space. So that is what makes this business so fascinating, and I'm excited. I'm very much having a good time running this business, and I'm learning tons. I didn't have a whole lot of acoustic experience coming into this, but I did have the electrical engineering background and the problem solving skills. And a lot of acoustics can translate back into electrical engineering in similar ways. Instead of resistance, you have impedance. So you can apply a lot of the same concepts into acoustics from electrical engineering.
I love that mindset. You can hear it in your voice, the way you talk about it, like this has become a passion for you, which to me tells me that you will be super successful at this business because it's something that most of us probably don't give half a thought to in our daily lives when we're in and out of buildings
Mhm.
and other places. Occasionally we hear sounds that annoy us or a really bad echo somewhere, but you're talking about improving people's lives in different ways with the autistic children and improving safety of workers and in places like I love that approach of not just selling the products that customers ask for, but actually making sure that the customers are getting the right thing and what they need, and not just buying a product because they think it's the right thing. That's
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's exactly right. And I will add to that. I mean, hearing loss is very underrated. There's not a whole lot of regulation around noise in the first place, but you would be surprised how many people end up with tetanitis or hearing loss because they were exposed to loud machinery or whatnot for long periods of time that they should have been wearing hearing protection, and we can help with that. That's really the value that we bring to companies across the country. We are also experts in vibration analysis, so industrial um, applications where there's loud machinery, loud equipment that's causing the whole building to shake and vibrate, and then that vibration turns into sound. That's also one of our specialties. We can diagnose and troubleshoot that and root cause the issue at the source.
That's incredible. Yeah, a lot of things that a lot of us don't think about every day that are super important. I'm sure that like structurally that probably impacts businesses in certain ways too, and buildings.
Yeah.
Um, Going into the acquisition, what was one of your worst fears that you had uh, going in?
Yeah, I would say one of my biggest fears was not knowing much about acoustics. But I trusted myself. I was confident in myself to figure it out because this is not the first time in my life that I've had to figure something out. And just like I learned how to invest in real estate, just how I learned how to invest in the stock market, just how I learned how to take care of my ailing parents. I believe in my capability and I'm confident in myself to figure it out. And be humble with myself, be honest that I don't know it, but I will figure it out. And that's totally fine. I think sometimes we expect too much of ourselves or we aren't honest with ourselves and our capabilities. I mean, granted, I had to do a lot of work to get to where I am today. It didn't just happen overnight. I had to look back into my past and see what experiences had shaped and melded my way of thinking and the stories that I would tell myself. But now that I have overcome those, it is a lot clearer to me that if I don't know something, I am capable of figuring it out and growing as a result and becoming the best version of myself.
So, would you say looking back now at that fear that you had going in, was it something that even, uh, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but was it well-founded? Was it a accurate fear now that you know what you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because yeah, now I laugh looking back on it because sure, I didn't know anything, but over the last 6, 7 months, I have learned tons, and I'm very grateful to the staff, that, has over 40, almost 50 years of acoustics experience, and I've been training under their wing, and they have been very open and transparent about all their knowledge, and they haven't held anything back. I'm very grateful to them for having taught me what I need to know about the business to keep running it forward. But yeah, it's not only have I learned what I needed to learn, but I've had fun along the way. I've enjoyed the process. I've enjoyed the journey. If I'm not challenging myself, I don't feel productive. And taking this on has only proven to myself even further that I am capable of anything that I set my mind to. And I still don't know everything. Don't get me wrong. I don't know every single n- detail about acoustics, but I have learned in the past 6 months a whole lot more than what I knew coming in. And I can only imagine in the next 6 to 12 months how much more I'll know about the business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. So 2 things there. Number 1, the topic, the knowledge, the specific skill or knowledge of the business that you're buying. I get asked by people that all the time of, "Do I need to know, should I only be looking at businesses where have the skill set?" And I say no, as long as you have the willingness and ability to learn that skill or that industry or whatever it is. And then the point about the fear, the reason I asked what your worst fear was, obviously going in, and then whether or not that was a well-founded fear or not, is because a lot of times we put those stories in our heads, like you mentioned, and we have unfounded fears. Once you actually get into it, you realize, what was that? Why was I even that a fear? That's so far from anything I had to worry about. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Our mind is usually our worst enemy and it plays tricks on us. And I would encourage all the listeners out there that you should challenge your thoughts and you should challenge what you tell yourself because you'd be surprised how much more you are able to accomplish if you just take action and don't believe everything you tell yourself.
Yeah. Um, I have a couple other quick topics that I wanted to discuss, but I also want to be respectful of your time. So if you need to wrap up, we can. Otherwise, just ask a couple more questions.
I'm good. I've
Okay.
got probably another 15 minutes.
Okay. Um, we already touched on it a little bit, but the role of community, GoBundance in particular, played in this process for you. Obviously, the entrepreneurial summit in 2024 is what really drove you to go look for a business. how has that community helped you and supported you in the process of buying? Obviously, and again, you had a broker reach out to you from GoBundance. And then since you bought the business, is there any significant lessons or, any significant things that having a community like that has helped with in running the business?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say GoBundance has been instrumental, more so on the mindset rather than anything else. There's a wealth of knowledge in GoBundance. There's folks that have done things you never could have thought of. What makes GoBundance unique and special to me, at least, is the openness that people have and their wanting to help you accomplish your goals too, because GoBundance approaches life from a standpoint of giving without expecting anything in return. And that goes a very long way when you are in a community of men that are aspiring to become the best version of themselves. So, what I have recognized from being in GoBundance is that nobody in there knows me for who I was. Everybody in there knows me for who I want to become. And they will hold me accountable to becoming that version that I want to be. They will not stop until they see that I'm making progress towards becoming the version that I tell them I want to be. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't change who I want to be, but I can depend on them to hold me accountable to what I say I'm going to do and challenge me when I start deviating from that path and encourage me to get back on that path. That is priceless, in my opinion. And really, that's the value that I have gotten out of GoBundance. And I'll add one more thing. I mean, I'm sure you're aware, but GoBundance has 6 pillars, and it's not just business. They are very well rounded. They make sure that you are not dropping the ball in other realms of your life. So there's age defying health, there's genuine contribution, there's
Family.
yeah, family and relationships, there's adventure to making sure you're having fun and while you're accomplishing all this. And then there's
Spirituality one?
yes, there's a exactly
Okay.
spirituality and one more that I
Yeah.
can't remember.
Family,
But
yeah. Family, health, business, spiritual, adventure, and something else.
yeah, so basically that has shaped me and helped me stay well rounded and not just focus on the business, not just focus on the finances, but also on the family, on the adventure. Oh, and I have them here. So, extreme accountability is the other one. So, there's 6 pillars. There's authentic relationships, bucket list adventures, genuine contribution, extreme accountability, age defying health, and horizontal income are the 6 pillars. And we hold each other accountable to all of those.
Yeah, and that's the power of community and accountability is super important. Personally, I'm not a member of GoBundance, but I have been involved locally in Buffalo with the University of Buffalo Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership for years. I'm in other masterminds and other groups I'm in a fitness accountability group. I'm in Front Row Dads, which is family men with businesses, not businessmen with families. Similar concept to GoBundance. So, whatever tribe it is that you fit into personally in your business realm or personal realm, strongly encourage you to join it and help hold others accountable and be held accountable yourself. Um, uh,
Yes.
and then, kind of lastly, wrapping up, when you heard about businesses, your father was an entrepreneur, you had this real estate portfolio that you were building. Why did you choose to go and buy a business rather than just start one from scratch?
Yeah, great question. Starting a business from scratch is very tedious. My approach to this was buying a business that's already been proven and there is a market for it and that is cash flowing is much more conservative than taking unnecessary risk on starting a business from scratch and building it from the ground up. Now, I've come to learn that from this business that I bought that there was a lot more work that I underestimated. Work meaning that I feel like I've kind of started it from scratch because there was so much infrastructure that needed to be built out that was non-existent. But I still think buying a business that is cash flowing and proven for years, for decades, in the case of my business, I think there is value in that. And sure, you'll be paying a premium for it, but just like you're paying a premium for real estate in an A location versus a C or D location, there is intrinsic value in that, and it's a much safer bet, in my opinion. And it allows me to sleep better at night and not worry too much about what the future has in store.
Awesome. And that's kind of my whole mentality with starting this podcast and talking to people about buying businesses over starting from scratch. You at least have a baseline to go from. I know it for most people. I don't think you're alone when you first buy the business. It it probably does feel like you're starting from scratch, especially with the amount of infrastructure upgrades that you mentioned. And I might need to get you back to do another whole episode on that stuff. We kind of glossed over that, but that is some incredible value that I'm sure you added to the company. Um, yeah, I really, really appreciate you being here with me today and for that extra time. I know we went longer than planned, but I think you've brought incredible value to everybody listening. Um, if people want to connect with you or if they need acoustical services, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, no, once again, thank you for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure, and I definitely want to thank you for having me on your podcast. It's truly an honor and a privilege. If folks wanted to connect with me, they can reach me at Mike at memtechacoustics.com. You can also visit our website at www.memtechacoustics.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn under Michael Castaño. And you can also connect with me on Instagram if you'd like, at Memtech Acoustics or First Gen Investor. You can also reach me there.
First Gen Investor on Instagram. Uh, I will also put all of those links in the show notes below so that you can reach out to Michael, learn a little bit more about his journey. Was super impressed with his story. I think that it was awesome of you, Michael, to share that kind of deep, emotional story with your father and how you overcame it. I think the fact that we all tell ourselves stories about what we can and can't do in our lives is is important to realize for all of us, and that we shouldn't have limiting beliefs. We should have an abundance mindset, and you can really make a huge impact on this world by buying a business, and any business. Who would have thought, an acoustics business could really change people's lives, but it can, based on what
Okay.
you're telling
Yes.
us. It's
Yeah.
incredible. So really appreciate you being here. For everybody listening, if you could take a minute to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast app, I would really appreciate it. And until next time, enjoy yourselves, and I will see you again soon. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Business Buying for Financial Independence. If you're serious about owning your time and building long-term wealth, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.